podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket. Welcome back to this third week in our Advent series. Today we're talking about Corrie Ten Boom. And it might not be a familiar name to many, but Nicole shares with us her beautiful story, which is really amazing. And we talk a lot about coming up against those places in us that are fearful or doubtful, and how the Lord can work really powerfully in those experiences. We hope that you enjoy. God bless.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Erin.
And welcome to In the Thicket. We're so happy that you decided to join us today. So this is our third episode in this, what are we calling it? Advent exemplars, right?
Yeah. I think
Yes, Advent exemplars, yes.
Right. And so we're really excited to, I'm just told that my mic sounds a bit loud, so I'm going to back off a little bit so that I don't blast your eardrums. But anyway, okay, before we get into our saint for today, Rachel, Erin, how are you guys doing?
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I did not real that. Oh my gosh. Okay, Rachel.
Loaded question.
Apparently.
I mean, it is. I am a student, and it is December.
It's the time.
So
Yeah.
it's just it's kind of hard for the course. Like and I'm not the kind of student like I'm, anyways, we won't go into it. But the point is that it's December and I'm feeling it. Not like I'm feeling it, but I'm like, I'm feeling it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
But so is everybody, and it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fine.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
fine. This is fine. There's a meme for that, Rachel.
Yeah,
I'm sure
that's
you know the meme. Yeah.
That's right.
It's the one where there's like a little dog and he's like, this is fine, but around him like his house is burning down or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's fine. It's totally fine. Yeah. That's kind of where we're at right now. But yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Erin?
I'm good. I'm like, I feel like I have to say that tentatively because I'm like, I am like relatively good, but fall is always a little bit harder time for me. So I feel like every time I say that, and then like the next day, I'm like, well, I'm not going to move out of this rocking chair for a little while. And then I'm like, I've just lied to my whole world and said that I'm fine, and I'm not fine. But I am
relative,
fine.
right?
It's relative. Yeah. So, I mean, it's good. I went swimming today, which is good. So if people are just newly tuning in, I try and swim every couple of days because it helps with the fibro stuff like a lot. And I look so awesome because I have a cap and I have a snorkel and I have
It's really intense.
nose plug and goggles, and I've just ordered swim fins. Like, no, I have hand swim fins, and I've just ordered
hand
like
swim fins?
I didn't know that was a thing.
flippers.
Yeah.
They go on your hands, and they
Wow.
just like, it's like a hard thing, like a plastic
It's
thing,
like webbed
and
fingers.
it kind of like gives you like extra.
Unexpected.
like a frog.
I feel like it's
Yeah.
really unexpected. You know what I mean? Like when you go to the pool, there's many things about what you just said that it would just be like, wow, I didn't, that wasn't okay. You know,
there's like, people are probably like, this person is like, must be like a professional swimmer. And then I start swimming and they're like, well, I was incorrect in that assessment.
They're like, this is life-saving equipment for this person. It is necessary.
Yeah, I'm not bad though. I'm like consistently in the medium lanes now. So like,
you were a swimmer, right? Like you told a story about.
I did some. Yeah,
you swam for a long time.
Yeah. I'm just real excited about the flippers coming because then that's going to really complete the outfit.
Wow.
So
yeah,
incredible.
People are going to think you're training for some very specific sport. Like how there's like like
Iron Man or
like I told you guys I got lost down this like trampoline rabbit hole on YouTube where I was like watching these people do these like crazy trampoline tricks, which were so impressive. And that's like kind of like a sport. Like there's like teams and they do stuff. So people are probably looking at you and they're like, she's in some kind of snorkeling fin sport swimming thing. And
it's called snorkel fin.
It's called snorkel fin flip. Snorkel fin flippy. That's what it's called.
Snorkel flip fin.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go. We named it.
And currently you're winning,
Yeah, I am. I'm the world champion in snorkel flip fin.
You are.
You're so ridiculous.
This is great.
was
This is
amazing.
what you get of like end of school year tiredness too. Because I'm there. We had our last day of end of day too. Yeah, Tuesday evening. We're recording this.
Yeah.
Where we had our last day of classes today, and it was so funny. The last week of school about certain days where we'd be doing whatever activity or whatever thing in class, and my students would like get the giggles. And then it would be like uncontrollable. We were doing a songwriting thing where they had to take turns like leading a songwriting intervention as if they're using songwriting and music therapy. Nice. And by the end of them writing, whatever it was, 7 songs in 45 minutes that we did, they were just like, they were giddy. Like they were just losing it. It was hilarious. So
that's awesome.
It's kind of awesome. That's a nice way to end the semester. I like that.
That was good. Yeah. That's true.
Good. A lot of laughter.
Anyway. Yeah. Well, maybe Erin, you can, I was going to say you can draw us a picture of snorkel flip fin flipper flipping.
Snorkel flip fin champion. Yeah. I could,
something. Maybe post something.
We'll put it on Instagram. Yeah.
That's perfect. Okay, great. Well, today we are going to be talking about somebody who I really love the story of this person, Corrie Ten Boom. If you haven't heard of her, well, you're about to, so that's great. And so, let me just dive in and tell you a bit of her story. I don't know when I first heard about Corrie Ten Boom. I think my mom read her book. So she's written a lot of books.
Okay.
She lived from the late 1800s to, it was like 1892 to 1983 or something like this. I think she lived to be 91.
Okay.
And she wrote a lot of books, but her most famous book is called The Hiding Place, and this is where she kind of tells her whole story and biography. And so we heard about this growing up. We listened to also, I think, Focus on the Family Radio Theater did a production of The Hiding Place, which is really good.
Okay.
There's a couple movies made of her stories, plays, all kinds of stuff. So she was, a Dutch woman, and her father was a watchmaker. And so she, grew up with her father and a sister and a brother, and neither she or her sister ever married, and they lived with their father and kind of helped around the shop. And they were Christian, I think Dutch Reformed was their like denomination.
Right.
But when World War II happened and Holland was occupied, and everything started changing, and they ended up starting to hide Jewish people in their home. So they had somebody come in and build like a secret room in Corrie Ten Boom's bedroom, and 6 people lived there. 6 Jews.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So there was like a secret wall, and then they had like alarm system and this whole thing so that they could hide there. Wow. So I'll try to summarize her general story here. So they did this. Eventually somebody, a Dutch informant, like betrayed their family to the Nazis, and there were about 30 people arrested. In the end, they ended up releasing everyone except Corrie Ten Boom, her sister Betsy, and her father. They ended up getting sent to a concentration camp. Her father died pretty quickly. She and her sister, they were sent to various concentration camps, and her sister eventually died there too. Corrie Ten Boom was suddenly released one day, and sort of didn't know why until years later. She was told or informed that it was a clerical error, and all other women her age in that camp were sent to gas chambers the following week.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
And so she had this kind of miraculous and unexplained release in many ways. So she went back to Holland. Her brother and his wife and their kids were there, so she went and lived with them. And then she ended up doing just a lot of ministry after. She wrote her books. She had worked a lot with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and so she continued that work after. But she became a popular writer and speaker on the subject of forgiveness and of God's love and grace. And so she's really beautiful. And there's a couple of reasons why I really like her. It's funny, they did a production of The Hiding Place here in Nashville a few months ago, and Nathan and I went to see it. It was like a church group put it on, sort of a semi-professional or semi-amateur or whatever, I don't know,
Nice
thing. And so so it was good. And afterwards I was asking Nathan like what he thought of it, because he had never heard of her before. And so he was kind of like, he's much more artsy than me and like attentive to aesthetic things. So he was kind of like talking about the play, like, oh yeah, like I think this part worked really well, and but this part was a little bit incongruent, whatever. And I was like listening, okay, cool, And then he said, well, what, like, how is it for you? And I just like burst into tears in the car, so much that he ended up being like, okay, and like pulled over and was, because like just this woman and her stories had such an impact on my life. So for a couple of reasons. So let me tell you. So one is just that as she tells her story, she talks about when when they first started realizing that their Jewish neighbors and friends were going to be taken away, and they wanted to help, but then they knew that they were putting themselves at risk. Her father and her sister, there was no question. They were just immediately like, of course we're going to help. Like, if this is obvious, like, of course. And she knew that it was the right thing to do, but she was just really afraid. And it was really hard for her to kind of get over that fear. And even in the concentration camps, her sister was trying to evangelize everyone all the time and was just like, sneaking Bibles in and like doing all this stuff. And Corrie was just like, she just said she just felt angry a lot of the time. And she didn't feel like, she was like, how can you be trying to tell all these people about God, but God's let us be in this place, like she was just kind of, she's just very human, and yet she's the one who the Lord decided to deliver, like save from the gas chambers, and to go and then tell her story and tell a story of forgiveness. And she, there's this one kind of famous scene where she was, she'd been doing her ministry for a number of years, and she ended up going to Germany and doing like some talks there or something. And so she was talking about God's love and forgiveness, and that it doesn't matter who you are or what you've been, like God's love is for you and his forgiveness is for you and all of that. And afterwards, this man came up to her, and she looked at him and she realized he was one of the Nazi guards from the concentration camp. And he recognized her, or she recognized him. I don't remember if he recognized her or not. I don't think he did, but she for sure, and she knew him to be one who was particularly cruel to her sister. And he said to her, I've never heard anything like this. Like I'm just so touched that God's forgiveness can extend even into me, or something like that. Or he asked her, is that true that God can even forgive me? I should like find the actual story, so you'll have to go and read the book, okay? Because I'm like not telling the story very well. But as she looked at him and knew that he was almost waiting for her to confirm that, like, yes, like forgiveness is for him too. And in a sense, it was asking her forgiveness, or that's what she felt in that moment. And she looked at him and she just realized, like, I actually can't forgive him. I'm angry. Like, I cannot forgive this person. And he was holding his hand out, like to shake her hand or whatever. And she, so she just sent up a prayer. She's like, Jesus, like, you have to do this for me. I can't do it. You have to do it for me. And she said she felt like this current run through her arm. And she's like, as I reached out my hand and I grasped his hands in mine, and I was able to like extend that grace and forgiveness in that moment. She's like, but it wasn't me. It was Christ, And I just thought that's so beautiful. And that story has been so beautiful for me, because I just, of times where, you're where you realize that the love, your human love, my human love is not enough sometimes. But to be able to, it's almost like Therese's little way. It's like, well, we don't have to be enough. We can rely on the Lord, So anyway, there's lots of things that we'll start there. But Rachel and Aaron, have you guys heard of her before? What has been your impressions of Corrie Ten Boom?
I had heard of her before. And the story with the man that you mentioned, the Nazi who was, cruel to her sister. But I also am wondering, and I don't know if I'm getting this right, but is she also the one who like kind of like knits sometimes, like in her talks? Is that her? There's like somebody
maybe.
who like they knit, and like all in the talk, and all you can see from one side of the knitting is like all the knots on the back, and then or crochet or something, and then like at the end, like you flip it over, and it's something about like, our perspective, like God's perspective is different, and what looks like gnarled and knotted and like messy and totally awful, there may be another part to that reality that we just don't see yet. But that
could
God
definitely be her. One of the stories from the concentration camp is that their sort of, I guess, dorm or whatever, the room with she and whatever other women were living in got infested with fleas, and they were biting the women, and they were itchy, and she was like praying. She was like, God, like, okay, we're here, and I've come to accept the place that I'm at, and now but there's fleas. Like, could you not just, can we not just get a break? And then they learned and realized that the soldiers were raping women all over, but they did not go and rape the women in that dorm because of the fleas.
Oh my
and so then all of a sudden their perspective changed, where she realized, oh, like, thank you, God, for this. So I think she's had all of these experiences, realizing, oh, something that seems like just something not so good is there's some other reasons, or God is using it for good in some way. So that I don't know the story about the knitting, but that definitely could be her. It's definitely part of her message.
Well, if it's not her, it sounds like right in her wheelhouse. So
yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah. I didn't know anything really about her. I had never really heard about her except from what you shared, Nicole, when we were doing like planning for the Advent stuff and who you might want to talk about and stuff. But I have, like, in general, I've always had this kind of fascination. I hesitate to use that word because it's not like, it doesn't hold enough gravity, but a fascination with the things that happened during the Second World War and with concentration camps and with the evils that were perpetuated and things like that, because it seems incomprehensible from our perspective that could happen, that would be allowed to happen, that nobody would intervene, that the scale of things, that the stories that would come out of people's actions in the camp, like St. Maximilian Kolbe, or or even some of the stories of forgiveness of guards or others, or even like the founding of the Sisters of Life. I don't know if people might not know, but part of it came because Cardinal O'Connor traveled to Auschwitz and placed his hand like in the gas chamber, like in the crematorium, and just had this moment, which was really like a mystical experience of just being present to this evil, this like atrocious evil that was directly opposed to the dignity of the human person, which is like, he called the last battle of man, right? Like, it's not just an attack on things that have to do with people, but like on the very dignity of the human person themselves. So stories like this of like it just is, I mean, I love hearing about it because it's so real when you describe the things that she struggled with and how she was like, and I feel like it's like you say often, Nicole, the phrase like, and yet, like, I feel like that,
that's
like
true.
our podcast could, if it wasn't named In the Thicket, it could be named And Yet.
That's so like good. I love that.
But really, because it's like, she was in this place, and yet she, and it's like, so here's, despair, and yet,
all right, we're
suffering, and yet,
happening,
right? But
branding.
isn't it like, that's like, it just strikes you like that,
Totally.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
So cool. Wow. Yeah.
I think, sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
No, well, I was just thinking of another, and we can, I don't want to take
another name for the
podcast. I'm just thinking like all these other names that, we can rebrand in January.
Perfect.
But no, there's another person, and like I said, I don't want to take us too far off course from Corrie Ten Boom, but I think her name is Obianuju. No, wait. No.
Immaculate
Immaculate.
Gaza, yeah.
Obianuju is an amazing pro-life activist.
Yes.
I got them mixed up. They have nothing to do with each other other than they have names that I don't know how to pronounce her. But Immaculate Gaza, yeah, she's like has a similar kind of experience from the Rwandan genocide, which also and like went through this journey of forgiveness, like anger and forgiveness, and like forgave her captors and or people who had murdered her family and things like this. And I was just thinking, because you were describing this room that they create. First of all, I was also thinking it's kind of interesting that Corrie Ten Boom was the one who was hesitant because of fear, and then but it was like her room that they built the extension in. So like it's kind of crazy how that like she really had to face that fear, not just
all the time
they're in her house, but like in her room, like
Mm-hmm.
it's right there. And then also like the idea that these things are unthinkable, but they happen, like, and they've also happened in Rwanda, and they happen in other places, and like,
and they're happening now, like there are places in the, like
and it's like and I don't want to make this a conversation about pro-life stuff, but like even like we extend some of, and I'm not making any sort of analogies, but except to say that the dehumanization of a person is something that happens more than we realize, and it's just kind of sort of this
it's insidious, it's kind of everywhere.
It is insidious,
for sure.
But then like God calling her to sort of, in this very extreme expression of it, to really face her fear of being
all
destroyed. Of like,
well, and she has a beautiful story of when she was a child, and I think a friend of hers, the dad died in that family, and it just hit her like my parents could die, and I think she lost her mother at a fairly young age. And so she came home that night and was like, Daddy, I can't lose you. You can't die. You can't leave me. I can't, And her father said to her, Corrie, when we go and take the train, when do I give you your ticket? And she says, well, right before we hop on the train. He's like, yeah, that's right. He's like, so whatever things that we have to face in life, whether it's my eventual death or any other things, God will give you the grace to handle it right at the moment that you need it. Which I think is really beautiful, because it, when you read her book, you read so many times where she's kind of up against the wall or in this sort of situation, and then all of a sudden at the last minute there's the grace to handle the next thing, or there's the way through, or whatever it is. I think it's a beautiful meditation too, even in Advent, when we're in a season of remember, like, we're waiting for Christ and the birth of Christ, but we're also in a season of, like, in a very concrete, real way, we're, as Catholics and as Christians, waiting for the second coming of Jesus for real, back to earth, to come and fix things. And or waiting for our reunification with him in heaven at when we die. And in the midst of that, in the meantime, there are so many things that we are bearing with, right? Just the reality. And we're talking about all the evils in society, and so I think, I just think it can be a beautiful meditation of, sometimes for myself, this time of waiting can become a time of fear, of like being afraid of possible sufferings, and afraid of, like, well, what if this thing happens, or what if this gets worse, what if this, but to remember that God gives us the grace when we need it.
And even in the struggle, like she, I mean, really her example, and like, we actually, because she wasn't Catholic, she's not been declared a Catholic saint, she's not, but like, just like the saints who did heroic things, like there's real stories about real people who struggled with God, who wrestled with God. Like, who was it that wrestled with the angel?
Jacob,
yeah, who wrestled with the
Yeah.
angel. And then, I mean, like, scripture is full of stories of people who did it, like Peter, and
Or even the
wrestling with
Psalms.
himself, and like the Psalms,
Psalms are just an
and
expression of
Job,
prayer.
and right, like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, like, that struggle, it's like, it's okay to struggle with God. Like, it's okay. It's okay to, like, fight with him in a sense. Like, it's not, because it's not really fighting with him, but it's like fighting with your own nature coming up against him. Does that make sense?
And in a certain sense, fighting, yeah, you're like fighting yourself with him, but like bringing him
Right.
into the picture. It's almost like, even though you're fighting him, you're really saying to him, like, I kind of want you to intervene here. You know, you're like,
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm struggling with this, and you're the answer. I know you're the answer, but I'm mad at you because I don't see it. I don't get it. I don't
You're
know
still
how
engaging.
to do this. Yeah, exactly.
It's in a way you're letting God in to that, you know, in the way that you can, right? Which is, if you've ever sent up angry prayers to God or confused prayers, there's still prayers you're praying, like, you know, and I think that's what I love about.
It's just like trusting that God is bigger than those things, you know, like, he's bigger. He's bigger than my anger. He's bigger than my fear. He's bigger than my frustration. He can handle it all. And I can just, like we talk about that a lot, like being real with him, you know? Yeah.
And I think what, you know, this has kind of come up in all of our, with all of the exemplar episodes so far, I think. And also, it also is a very Advent thing, which is like, with God, there is always somehow possibility, you know, like, because it feels like, okay, if somebody who went through, you know, the Holocaust and was like in a concentration camp, and like all of these, the worst things have happened, and they can emerge from those experiences more whole, or in some ways not more whole. I mean, there was still, I'm sure, like there was tons of healing and stuff like that she had to do, but like, but the trajectory,
like, freer.
Exactly. The trajectory
He was no longer afraid.
Exactly. Like, it's not a trajectory that's like this warped me and messed me up beyond recognition. Instead, there was sort of like, through these terrible experiences, which no one would ever choose, or, and you know, you would never choose for someone, but they happened to her, and she just kind of like, they untwisted stuff for her. But it like unbound her from things that she was afraid of, and selfishness, and you know, and not just unbound her, but then like gave her, then she had these like superhuman capacities that just come from the grace of God, that are not totally her, but she's able to receive them, you know, like forgiving this man, and like, you think like, okay, that just speaks of the fact that God is a God of possibility, and maybe not the possibilities that we would like, or like we kind of want in the moment, but better, actually better, you know. And you mentioned with John Paul too, Nicole, I remember you saying, like, with his be not afraid thing, like, okay, he actually had so many reasons to be afraid, but he wasn't, because there's more. It's like this more reality that we're being invited to, and these kind of crazy stories of real people show us that that's real, that more is an invitation to all of us, you know. And and in a way, like, and we talked about this before, like, Advent is all about preparing for entry into the more, you know, like, there is like,
it's like the stereotypical, like, is it butterflies when they go into the chrysalis, and when they have to come out of the chrysalis, they have to, like, caterpillars, they have to struggle in order to squeeze out all the juices so that their wings can fly, and all of those kind of things, which sounds so crazy, and like people use it as an example all the time, but it's like, but it's actually like, God, it's beautiful because God has written that experience into nature. You know what I mean? Like, he speaks in everything to us, and it's like, and it's true that that's part of, like, the wrestling forms us, the you know, to come out beautiful.
And I think with our consent too, you know, like, And also it's a hard thing, right? Part of my class this semester was teaching about trauma and like the effects of trauma and the human brain and nervous system. And, we talk about how you can have one event, let's say an earthquake or some sort of other traumatic event, whatever it is. And some people emerge with post-traumatic stress disorder and some do not.
Yeah.
And, and what makes the difference? And I think that, wouldn't it be, well, I want to be careful not to say it's, it's to go through something difficult. All we have to do is just, be consent to the Lord's working and then everything is going to be fine. It's like, well, that doesn't maybe preclude actual trauma from happening.
Yeah,
like, I don't know,
totally.
all those effects on her. And yet there's my and yet.
And yet.
And yet gotta trust that there can be still, of course, healing. There can always be healing from trauma. And we know that from the way that the brain works, that no matter how many years it's been since the trauma was there, if there's a place of safety and healing and a release of all that pent up literal energy in the nervous system through a good therapist or safe people, that there can be actual healing from that, which is beautiful. But also, I lost my train of thought, you guys. I'm so sorry. I just started going into lecture mode.
It's good. I think the point was really good. Like,
healing.
Like healing is possible.
Trauma is still real. Like, and even if you're like walking with God, like, I mean, I think that Corrie Ten Boom's life is a good example of that, right? Like they were doing the Lord's will in protecting these people that were hiding in their home, and they still got captured, and her dad died and her sister died, and but again, but
the beautiful thing is actually all 6 of the people who they had been hiding were never found, and they all escaped. And she found that someone sent her a secret message while she was in prison, and everything was coded because her dad was a watchmaker. And so they coded it. They said, all of your watches are safe and have been, distributed to new owners or something. Like they'd all were safe and were able to leave the country or something like that.
That is amazing.
That's
beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah,
so beautiful.
That's like the guy whose life St. Maximilian Kolbe saved, who was in St. Peter's Square when Maximilian Kolbe was canonized.
Right.
There's something. Yeah, what is it about? I mean, like, there is something so powerful, right? Like that making a gift of your life like that for the sake of someone else. It's just so like, I mean, obviously, like that's the mode of love that Jesus demonstrates for us, but it's like, but yeah, I don't know, it just speaks to like the preciousness of the person who made that sacrifice and the preciousness of the people that person saved, just like, so it's just so moving and so cool. And
I'm gonna read that book now. We'll put it in the show notes so that everybody can read it.
The Hiding Place. And you can buy it. It's also, I found it online as like a PDF for free as well. Nice. So cool. Corrie Ten Boom, The Hiding Place. It's a good one.
And it's awesome.
It's so funny because I was thinking today, like the readings for Mass today, like all the readings for Advent are so epic, right? Like they're just like, because it's the last days and is it Revelation? I don't know. I'm just like, is it Revelation? Yeah, it's right. And like it's just so epic. And so I don't know, there's something about her story that's just so epic, and it's sort of
truly is
this time,
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Well, thanks, ladies.
Totally gonna read it.
I feel like that was a little bit of a rambly conversation, but if you're listening, hopefully there's some good nuggets in there.
That's right. Yeah. I would love to do a shout out to Faith from Instagram. Hi, Faith. Because Faith sent us a really lovely message. And she had tagged us in it because when your Spotify Wrapped comes out or whatever, we were one of her top podcasts for listening for the year. And so
thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, so she shared it was awesome. And then and then she said it's been a bomb over the last year for her.
So sweet. That's
like a bomb, like BALM.
Yes, not BOMB. We did not blow up her life. But
that's
BALM.
a good distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or we were the bomb, BOMB.
That's right. Exactly. Could be that. Anyways, so shout out to Faith.
Yeah.
Although I have to say it's so funny because her name is Alyssa Faith on Instagram, and my first name is Alyssa, but I go by Erin Kinsella. So I don't know if that's the same with you, Faith. You can let me know. Send me a
Alyssa Erin
message.
Kinsella.
Yeah, maybe it's Alyssa Faith. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
That's another tangent, but turn it over to you, Rach. You got the God wink for today.
Right. So, right. So my God wink is, I ended up staying stateside for American Thanksgiving, which for everybody, a lot of Americans listening, that's just Thanksgiving. But for Canadians, which is, I am one, that was American Thanksgiving. And it was like a nice long week that we had off. So I could have gone home, but for different reasons, I decided to stay. And I got some kind of hard news that week, like some really hard news that week. And it's news I could have gotten before that week, but it just sort of worked out that I got that news during that week. And first I was like, Lord, what the heck? And it was really hard. But then after I was like, thank God I got that news this week, because I had planned on writing papers, which did not happen at all because of this hard news. But I didn't have any classes and I just had time to process. And it just felt very intentional from God that like I had the time, because I really needed it. Like if I'd had classes, go, like all the things. And then like I had some friends that were just in town and I was supposed to study with them. And they were like, dude, don't worry, just come over for dinner. And so I went over for dinner and we had like a gin tonic and it was just like, okay, I just, it was like a rough time, but I also felt very kind of carried by God. It was like, he was like, I know it's gonna be hard. Here's a gin and tonic. Like, and it was
I love it when he does that.
Yeah, right. It was great. So
that's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I felt very loved and also very sad at the same time. No, but it was good. It was good. I'm really grateful.
So great.
Really good.
The ticket, I got the ticket when I needed it, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
The ticket.
That's good. That's good. Well, thanks folks for listening. We love you and we appreciate you.
Yeah.
And
for you.
Next week we're back with Charles de Foucault. Is that how you pronounce it?
I think you should just say Charles.
Charles de Foucault. Charles de Foucault.
I think it would just be Foucault, right?
I think so. Foucault, yeah.
Anyway, isn't this a sad thing? Here's three of us Canadians all trying to figure out how the heck to say something in French.
You guys,
it's Foucault. Yeah. Charles de Foucault. Yeah,
Charles de Foucault. Yeah, okay,
I probably am not even that great. Okay, anyway, before we disgrace ourselves more. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless and see you next week.